I knew he was different when he didn't flirt. Not in the traditional sense, not with compliments or jokes or the kind of casual arrogance that most men wear like aftershave. No, Anur didn't flirt. He observed. He listened in a way that felt more like touch than attention. The first time we met, he asked me what I was like when I was 6. 6. Not what I did for work. Not where I lived. Not even what I was drinking. Just, what were you like at 6? Before anyone taught you how to shrink. I blinked. I don't know. Loud, I think. I used to sing in the bathroom. He smiled like I'd handed him something sacred. That makes sense. Your voice still carries tenderness like it's scared of echo. I remember that word. Echo. It stayed with me. Just like he did, for a while. We met in a writing workshop, of all places. He wasn't even in my group. Just passed me in the hallway and said, "You look like someone who rewrites her pain until it sounds like poetry." I should have clocked it for what it was, a line. A well-crafted one. But I was tired of men who didn't speak in full sentences. And Anur? He bled metaphors. He was Moroccan, raised in Marseille, moved to London at 17. He said his mother taught him how to make mint tea and fold grief into pockets so it wouldn't show in public. When he told me that, I didn't know if he meant it literally. I didn't ask. Some men invent their own mythologies. And some of us are too starved for softness to care if it's real. Our first date was in a jazz bar tucked behind a bookstore. No drinks, just herbal tea and candlelight. He asked if he could sit on the same side of the booth as me. Not to be close, he said. To see what I looked like when I wasn't trying to be seen. I laughed. But I let him. He smelled like bergamot and wool. His fingers brushed mine once, deliberately, and I felt it in my knees. He didn't kiss me that night. He just walked me to my car, leaned in, and whispered, "You breathe like you're still asking for permission." I didn't sleep that night, but not for the reasons I expected. He never rushed anything. It was almost maddening, the way he stretched out the space between touches, like foreplay was a language, and he wanted to learn the grammar before speaking it. We spent 2 weeks in what I can only describe as a slow-motion seduction. Long walks, shared desserts, voice messages that sounded like lullabies. He'd send me recordings of poems he liked, but read them himself, low and steady, like he wanted to replace my own thoughts. And it worked. I started thinking in his voice. The night we finally slept together, it was raining. Not a dramatic storm, just a soft, steady drizzle that made everything feel like it was happening inside a secret. He came over wearing a black sweater and carrying a book of Neruda's lost poems. Said he didn't want to read them to me. Just wanted them in the room. That should have been a red flag. Who brings poetry to a fuck? But I was already too far in. I wanted him the way you want silence after 3 days of noise. We sat on my couch, shoulder to shoulder. He played with the hem of my sleeve, slowly, like he was trying to memorize the texture. When he finally kissed me, it wasn't urgent. It was grateful, like he'd been waiting to earn it. And I let him. The sex was slow, reverent. He took off my clothes like he thought they might shatter. His hands were warm, steady, always asking without words. He kissed the inside of my wrist, my jaw, my ribs. He avoided my mouth for a long time. When I finally pulled him in, he whispered, "Now I believe you." I didn't ask what he meant. My brain was too far gone. He moved inside me like he was afraid of breaking something, me maybe, or himself. His eyes stayed on mine the entire time. There was no dirty talk, just breathing, and a single sentence whispered into my neck. "Let me stay where it's quiet." That was the moment I fell, not in love, but into his sadness. Afterward, we lay there in silence, my head on his chest, the rain tapping softly against the window. I felt good, held, seen, maybe even safe, until I felt his chest start to shake. I lifted my head. Tears. No. Sobs. He was crying hard, like something had snapped. I sat up, confused, still naked, blanket pulled around my hips. "Anur?" He didn't look at me, just kept crying. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't think I'd feel so empty after." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He shook his head, covering his face with one hand. "It's not you. It's not you. You were," he choked on the word. "You were too much. Too real. Too beautiful. I wasn't supposed to feel this." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Did I hurt you?" "No. No. You opened something I wasn't ready to look at." He sat up, still facing away from me. I thought I was ready. I thought I could handle being touched again. But it just made me realize how long I've been pretending. And then he said it. "I feel like I just used your body to mourn someone else." I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. He got dressed in silence. Didn't kiss me goodbye. Just whispered, "I'm sorry," and left. The next morning, he sent a text. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were a cathedral." I showed up barefoot. I stared at it for 10 minutes, then deleted it. But I couldn't delete the way my body still remembered his. The way my sheets smelled like cedar and grief. The way I'd held him after, even though I was the one bleeding. My friends said he was manipulative. That he used tears the way other men use anger, to control the room. That his sadness was seductive, but ultimately selfish. I wanted to disagree, but I couldn't, because I still hadn't figured out what I'd consented to. Was it sex? Or was it a seance? Had he been making love to me, or to a ghost? A week later, he sent me a poem. No greeting. No explanation. Just this. I entered you like a man trying to find his mother in a stranger's mouth. I didn't respond, but I reread it. Several times. Months have passed. I haven't seen him since. But sometimes when I'm alone, I think about how he cried after touching me. And I wonder, did he plan it? Was it real? Was I? Or was I just the space he used to collapse in, because I seemed soft enough to absorb the fall? Here's what I know now. Not all abusers yell. Some whisper. Some cry. Some hold you like you're their last hope, and leave before you even realize you were never theirs to keep. And sometimes the worst part isn't the leaving. It's the fact that you still ache for them after, even when you know their grief had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with the ghosts they never asked for permission to bury in your skin. I wish I could say I saw it coming, that I recognized the signs early on, that I listened to the quiet tug of discomfort in my gut. But love, or something pretending to be it, has a way of blurring edges, softening red flags into pink ones. And Dorian knew exactly how to blur. It started on a rainy Tuesday, the kind where the sky sulks and the air hangs heavy. I had just gotten home from work, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a glass of red wine when the Bumble notification buzzed on my phone. "You have the kindest eyes I've ever seen," the message read. I couldn't scroll past them. I almost didn't respond. I'd grown tired of the predictable intros, "Hey, you up?" or the occasional emoji barrage. But something about Dorian's message, earnest, deliberate, stood apart. That, and his photo, a man in a dark green sweater, seated in a leather armchair, a book in one hand, and a sleepy whippet tucked beside him. It felt curated but not performative. I replied, "Kind eyes, huh? I'll take that." What followed was a conversation that felt less like texting and more like slow dancing. He asked questions no one else had ever asked on an app, about the first book I loved as a child, what song I'd want played at my funeral. His answer, "Hallelujah," but only the Jeff Buckley version, whether I believed in soulmates. He was poetic, thoughtful, a little intense, but in a way that felt flattering. By the time I finished my wine, we had exchanged numbers. The next morning, I woke up to a text. "Good morning, Seraphine. I hope your dreams were kind." I smiled. I hadn't smiled like that in months. By the third day, he sent flowers to my office. White tulips, my favorite. I never told him that, which made it feel like magic. Or fate. The card read, "Last night was magic." My coworkers teased me. "Oh, someone's got a romantic." I blushed, brushing them off, but inside I was glowing. I felt chosen, seen, cherished. We met for dinner that weekend. He picked a little Italian bistro tucked beneath a bookstore. Candlelight flickered between us as he reached for my hand across the table. "You're even more beautiful in person," he said, eyes locked on mine. "And I don't mean in a magazine way. I mean your presence, it's gentle." I melted. By the second week, he was calling me his person. He texted me before I woke up, sent voice notes filled with poems he said reminded him of me, even mailed a framed photo of us together after our second date. It was overwhelming, but I mistook the intensity for love. "You're everything I've ever looked for," he whispered one night as we lay tangled in my sheets. "I know it's fast, but I love you, Seraphine." Love. That word already? I hesitated. I liked him, more than liked him, but love? Still, I didn't correct him. I didn't want to ruin the moment. But the moment didn't stay. Moments, I've learned, are greedy things. They expect permanence. When I told him I needed to slow things down, that I was feeling a bit breathless from the pace, his expression changed. Not overtly, just a flicker. The warmth shifted. "Oh," he said, his voice light, but something cold seeped in. "I didn't realize I was overwhelming you. I guess I'm just not used to someone pushing me away after I open up." My stomach nodded. I'm not pushing you away. It's fine, he cut in, smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. I just thought we had something real. I didn't expect you to get cold so fast. I apologized. For what? I wasn't sure. For my honesty? For my need to breathe? That night, he didn't text goodnight. The next morning, there was no good morning, my love. The silence was sharp. I reached out. Are you okay? Just giving you space, he replied. Wouldn't want to smother you. The sarcasm stung. I tried to smooth things over, telling myself he was just hurt. Sensitive. Romantic. But Dorian's warmth began to flicker like a faulty bulb. One day he was affectionate, sending me long messages about how deeply he felt for me. The next, he was distant, responding with one-word answers. When I didn't reply fast enough, he'd write things like, "Nice to know where I stand." I started to shrink myself to keep him happy. I'd cancel plans to be available when he texted. I stopped bringing up the things that bothered me. I tiptoed around his moods like shattered glass. When I said I couldn't see him one weekend because my sister was visiting, he didn't reply for hours. Then, guess I'm not a priority. I called him. He ignored it. He texted later. You don't have to pretend. I get it. You're bored now. I cried, and then apologized. Again. It was only after I started pulling away that I saw the full shape of his manipulation. He began reaching out to my friends. At first, it was charming, even sweet. Little messages like, "Thanks for taking care of Seraphine. She's lucky to have you." But then it changed. My best friend, Mariel, called me one night. "Did you tell Dorian I said he was unstable?" "What?" "No." He messaged me. Said I should mind my own business and stop interfering in your love life. My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "He said you told him I didn't approve of your relationship, that I thought he was manipulative." I hung up and called him furious. He answered, all wounded innocence. "Why are you so upset?" "I was just defending us." "No, you were putting words in my mouth. I thought we were a team, Seraphine. But I guess you're just like everyone else." That phrase became his anthem. Just like everyone else. The implication, I had betrayed him. Soon after, other friends grew distant. One asked if everything was okay between me and Dorian. He had messaged her saying he was worried about my mental health. He told another friend I was battling inner demons, and he was trying to help me heal. He was building a narrative, one where I was unstable, ungrateful, and he was the savior, the gentle, wounded lover. I confronted him. "You're poisoning my life. You're manipulating everyone around me." He looked at me calm. "You really think they'd believe that? You've been so emotional lately. Maybe you should talk to someone." I froze. That's when I knew. This wasn't love. It was control wrapped in ribbon. I blocked his number, deleted the photos, shut down my social media for weeks. But the damage had been done. I spent months rebuilding trust, with others and with myself. I questioned every decision, every memory. Was I too sensitive? Too selfish? Was I the problem? Therapy helped. Slowly. My therapist called it what it was: love bombing, gaslighting, emotional abuse. I still have the tulip card. I found it in a drawer months later. Last night was magic. I keep it not because I miss him, but to remind myself how easily enchantment can become entrapment. He listened better than anyone I'd ever met. That's what made me fall into him. Not fall in love, fall into. Like a warm bath. Like a trap disguised as comfort. We met at a panel on emotional intelligence, of all things. I was there for work, bored and scrolling through my phone, when he leaned over and said, "You're the only person here who looks more interesting than the speakers." I smiled without looking up. "And you're the only person here who thinks that line still works." He liked that. He liked being challenged. His name was Aaron. Turkish, he explained. Meant sane or peace, depending on context. I should have paid more attention to the second part, depending on context. Our first date was quiet. Coffee, no alcohol. He asked more questions than anyone usually does on a first date, but it didn't feel like an interview. It felt like focus, like he was tuning the dial to a frequency only I gave off. "What were you like at 12?" he asked. I blinked. 12? Yeah, before you learned how to make people like you. I actually laughed. He didn't. He just watched me, tilting his head like he was filing the reaction away. I thought it was romantic. I didn't know I was being recorded, if not technically, then emotionally. We didn't have sex for 3 weeks. Not because he was shy, he wasn't. He was deliberate. He kissed me like he was testing temperature. held me like he was memorizing my density. When we finally went to bed, it was after hours of bare skin pressed together, just breathing. He didn't say much, but he watched everything. When I moaned, he didn't speed up. He slowed down, like he wanted to see what else he could extract. He whispered, "You like praise, but only when it surprises you." I froze. "What? You don't trust compliments unless they sneak up on you." I didn't reply, but he was right. It thrilled me, and it scared me. After that night, things deepened. He sent me playlists titled "For After You Come." Wrote me letters in lowercase like secrets. Always knew exactly when I needed space, and when I needed to be pulled close. He was flawless. Too flawless. I started wondering how he got so good at reading me. Then I found the file. It was a Sunday morning. He was in the shower. I was curled in his bed, half naked, warm, dazed from the night before. I reached for his iPad to play music. It was already open. I saw a file with my name on it. Not a cutesy nickname. My full name. First and last. Curiosity 1. I tapped. It opened a document. The first line. Subject, Zorina Malik. Emotional type, surface guarded, deep reactive. My blood cooled. I kept reading. Avoids eye contact during vulnerability. Trust test, prolonged silence. Responds positively to uncertain praise. You might be the best I've had. Versus direct compliments. Erotic trigger. Breath near left ear, downward pressure on hips. High sensitivity. Said she doesn't like being watched, but didn't close her eyes during oral. Note, contradiction. I scrolled and scrolled. There were timestamps. Body maps. Quotes I'd forgotten saying. He had recorded me in words. Not illegally. Not technically. But intimately. Mechanically. I was a collection. A case study. He came out of the bathroom, towel low on his hips, water still dripping from his collarbone. I didn't look up. "Why do you have a file on me?" He paused, then sat at the edge of the bed. "You weren't supposed to see that." I laughed. "That's your answer? It's not what you think." "Oh good, because I thought I was being emotionally dissected for pleasure." He looked at me like I was being dramatic. "I track patterns. I've always done it. It helps me love better." "Love?" He softened. "Yes. I wanted to give you exactly what you needed." I stared. "No. You wanted to control how I felt." He looked away, which told me everything. I left that morning. He didn't chase me. He did send a message the next day. Just one. "I never used it against you. I just wanted to understand you better than anyone else ever did." I didn't block him, but I never answered. Here's the thing that haunts me. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't careless. He was precise. And that precision felt like love until I realized it wasn't real affection. It was performance. And I was simply a role he'd studied for. And passed. He never told me what to do. He just made me feel like I could be better. It started with a DM. I'd commented on one of his reels, something about discipline and dopamine, and he replied with a thank you voice note. His voice was low, confident, like someone who never had to raise it to be heard. His name was Selim. Not Caleb. Selim. Latin, he said. Meant sky. He was a lifestyle coach, whatever that really meant. He posted videos about morning routines, the power of cold showers, quitting caffeine, journaling your demons. I didn't follow men like that, usually, but he was different. He didn't preach. He invited. Our first date felt like a wellness retreat disguised as foreplay. He took me to a raw food cafe. Talked about eye contact as intimacy. Said dopamine wasn't real connection. That pleasure without transformation was just noise. He kissed me slowly, like he was reading my nervous system. I felt seen. Not in a performative, Instagram quote kind of way. In the way that makes you want to rip your skin off and start over. He never criticized me outright. He'd just say things like, "You're so powerful when you're focused." Or, "You're in your feminine when you're not overthinking." Or, "You breathe like someone who's been holding her story too long." I started waking up earlier, drinking less, changing my clothes, my food, my words. He never asked me to, but I wanted him to keep looking at me the way he did when I was aligned. The sex was slow, intentional. He'd touch me like he was guiding energy, whisper things like, "Let go of the old version." Sometimes he'd stop just before I came and say, "Stay in your body." It wasn't domination. It was something trickier. He made surrender feel like growth. At first, I felt better. I journaled more, meditated, deleted half my closet, cleaned my apartment like it was a temple. But eventually I noticed I was never quite finished. There was always one more thing to transcend. My coffee habit, the way I fidgeted, the fact that I scrolled when I was anxious. He started saying things like, "That's not you. That's your pattern." Or, "I miss the version of you that was soft." I didn't realize I was being shaped until I couldn't recognize myself. One night, I cried during sex. Not from pain. Not from joy. Just exhaustion. He pulled back. "You're not present." I whispered, "I'm trying." He exhaled. "That's the problem. You keep trying to be who you already are. You just don't believe it yet." I wanted to scream, but instead I apologized. The last straw was a video. He posted a reel about women in resistance and used a voiceover clip of me crying, something I'd sent him privately during a vulnerable moment. He didn't name me, but I knew it was me. When I confronted him, he said, "It was beautiful. Your pain was sacred." I wanted to honor it. I said, "You used me." He shook his head. "I showed you." I left. He didn't follow. It's been months. Sometimes I still wake up at 5 a.m., instinctively reaching for my journal. Then I remember, I don't need to be my best self every day. Some days, just being is enough. Because anyone who makes you feel like you're always a project isn't a partner. They're just another kind of coach. And I'm not signing up for that program again. You know how everyone says to trust your gut? My gut didn't speak. It purred. The first time I met Tomasz, I wasn't thinking about red flags. I was thinking about how his voice curled around vowels like velvet. How he looked at me, not hungry, not desperate, but like he'd already tasted me in a dream and was simply waiting for the real thing to catch up. We met at a wine tasting in a converted greenhouse on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place where everything smells like wet stone and fermented oak, and time slows down just enough to make eye contact last longer than it should. He stood beside me at the Syrah table, swirling his glass like a ritual. I made a dumb joke about wine legs. He smiled, dimple and all, and said, "I always preferred mouths to legs." I nearly choked on my drink. He didn't laugh at his own line. He just waited, like he knew I'd need a second. His name was Tomasz. Polish, born in Wrocław, raised in Lisbon. He said it like a sigh, Tomasz. I repeated it, and he tilted his head, pleased. "You say it like you've rolled me around in your mouth before." I should have walked away right then. But I didn't. I stayed. Our first date wasn't even a date. He invited me to a bookstore cafe that served espresso in tiny ceramic cups with cinnamon-dusted rims. We sat in the back corner and talked for 4 hours about scent memory, Portuguese poetry, the taste of metals in the mouth. He didn't touch me once, and yet my skin buzzed the entire time. He said things like, "I notice how you hold your breath when you don't want something, and I don't need to know everything about you, just the parts you forget to hide." When he walked me to my car, he kissed my hand like we were in a scene from In the Mood for Love. I went home and touched myself to the thought of his mouth just almost touching mine. The first time we slept together wasn't even meant to happen. He came over with a bottle of red and an old vinyl of Cesaria Evora. Said he wanted to hear something slow while watching the way I moved when I didn't know I was being watched. He said things like that, and I let him. We didn't rush. He took his time, tracing my collarbone with the back of his hand, like he was reading Braille. He undressed me slowly, asking nothing, commanding nothing, just letting his curiosity replace consent without ever overstepping it. When he finally moved inside me, it was silent. No dirty talk, no gasps, just soft, rhythmic motion, his eyes never leaving mine, his hand pressed against my sternum like he was anchoring me to the moment. After, I lay on his chest and listened to his heartbeat. He kissed the side of my head and whispered, "You make stillness feel like ceremony." I thought I was falling in love, but I wasn't falling. I was being watched. The first message came 2 nights later. No name, no greeting, just, "You look beautiful in the photo." I stared at my phone, heart thudding. Another message followed. "I can see why he picked you." I didn't respond. I didn't even breathe. A third message. "He told me you were a gift. He always chooses women who dream in sepia." My chest tightened. I texted Tomasz immediately. He replied 5 minutes later. "Don't worry. I'll explain everything. Just don't panic." We met in person the next night. He brought flowers, lilies, not roses. Said he liked the way they surrendered to water. I asked him, "Who's messaging me?" He didn't lie. He said, "My wife." I froze. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I thought you were divorced." "I never said that." You assumed. You also didn't correct me when I asked if you lived alone. He exhaled. We're married, but we have an understanding. I stared. She knows about you, he added. I told her how I felt. She supports me exploring. She likes seeing me light up. I shook my head. She messaged me. That's not support. That's surveillance. He shrugged, almost regretfully. She likes to be part of it. She doesn't touch. She just watches. I felt sick. You showed her a photo of me. Yes. Did you take it when I was asleep? No. You let me. Remember? After we made love. It wasn't making love. Not anymore. Now it felt like performance art. I ghosted him after that. Blocked the number. Changed my Instagram settings. Tried to forget the way he said you're a gift, like I was an object to be unwrapped and passed between consenting adults who never actually asked for my consent. But he found a way back. A month later, I got a package. No note. Just a copy of On Love and Other Difficulties by Rilke. Inside, one line was underlined. Love consists in this, that two solitudes protect and touch and greet each other. I threw it in the trash. But I kept thinking about it. And worse, I missed the way he touched me. The way he made me feel like art. Like something rare. Until I remembered. Even museums lock up at night. Because admiration is just another way of saying, you belong behind glass. I never saw Tomash again. But some nights, when the lights are low and I'm tracing my own skin just to feel something real, I think about the camera I never saw. The third pair of eyes I never consented to. The first message came 3 days after I slept with him. Just a number. No name. No greeting. It read, "You really think he's clean?" I blinked at the screen. The bubble disappeared, then reappeared. He wasn't 3 weeks ago. I stared at it, chest tight. I hadn't told anyone we'd had sex. We'd only been seeing each other for 2 weeks. It had been slow, flirty, full of long glances and quiet touches. We finally crossed the line on a rainy Thursday night, after wine and a long kiss in my hallway. His name was Kian. He had a laugh that made you lean in and a voice that made you stay. I didn't reply to the message. I told myself it was spam. A scam. Someone trying to rattle me. But I didn't sleep that night. And in the morning, I found the second message waiting. Ask him about the girl with the red scarf. Ask him what happened to her toothbrush. The next time I saw Kian, I didn't say anything. I watched him. The way he moved around the kitchen like he belonged there. How he made coffee for both of us without asking how I took it, because he'd already remembered. He kissed me softly, hands lingering on my back. I almost forgot the messages. Until I went to the bathroom and saw it. A pink razor in the shower, tucked behind his bottle of conditioner. It was too clean to be forgotten, too recent to be old. I confronted him. Not with anger, just curiosity. Do you live with someone? He frowned. No. Why? There's a razor in your shower. He laughed. That's my sister's. She stayed here last week. It sounded rehearsed. Still, I let it go. Until the third message came. That's not his sister's. I used that razor yesterday. I started digging. Nothing extreme. Just light stalking. But the more I looked, the more I found. His social media was sparse. No tags. No recent photos with women. But there were gaps. Weekends where he vanished. Nights he didn't text back. A few blurry photos in the background of someone else's post. A woman with long dark hair, always just out of focus. Then came the fourth message. I'm still living here. I sleep on the couch when you come over. He says I'm crazy, but I've never left. I asked Kian directly. Is there someone else? He looked hurt. No, of course not. Someone who thinks you're still together? He sighed. My ex, maybe. She has trouble letting go. Is she still in your life? He hesitated. She's around. We broke up months ago, but she's having a hard time moving forward. And she has a key? He didn't answer. I walked out. That night, I got a message with a photo. Me. In his kitchen. Making tea. Hair tied up. Back turned. The angle was from the hallway. He told me you were just a friend. I deleted it. Then I vomited. I didn't block the number. I wanted to understand. I replied, "Why are you still there?" The response came immediately. Because he made promises. He said I was it. He said he just needed space, not someone else. Then you showed up. I wrote. He said you broke up months ago. She answered. He says a lot of things. I stopped seeing him, but he didn't stop texting. He said he missed me, that he was sorry, that his ex was unstable, and he was trying to create distance. He said, "You're real. She's history." I didn't respond, until the night I came home and found a note under my door. It wasn't from him. It was written in sharp, neat cursive. "If you come back, I'll be watching. He still fucks me when you leave." I moved 2 weeks later. The last time I saw Kian, it was an accident. A bookstore. He was alone. Or so I thought. We locked eyes. He walked toward me. Then she appeared behind him. Not clinging. Not hiding. Just there. Like she'd always been there. He looked at her. Then at me. And said nothing. I turned and left. I didn't need to hear it. I already knew the story. It's been nearly a year. I still flinch when I hear footsteps behind me on the stairs. I still check the corners of my photos before I post anything. But I've learned. Sometimes, the ex isn't over because they were never asked to leave. And sometimes love isn't a triangle. It's a trap, with 2 doors, and only one of them's unlocked. He was standing in line at the corner bakery, arguing, gently, with the barista about the pronunciation of Kuanaman. I laughed under my breath. He turned to me and said, "You say it." I tried. Failed. He grinned. "Let's just call it the pastry that ruined my last diet." We shared coffee outside. No pressure. No numbers exchanged. Just a mutual smile, and if I see you again, I'll take it as a sign. I saw him again 2 days later. He remembered my name. I remembered the way he looked at people, like he was cataloging their emotions. His name was Elian. We started seeing each other regularly. Dinners, late-night drives, books traded like secrets. He was affectionate, attentive, never pushy. But only on weekdays. Monday to Friday, he was magnetic. Weekends? Gone. He always had a reason. Family obligations. Work retreats. Dead zones with no signal. Once, he said he was helping his cousin move and didn't text for 48 hours. It became a pattern. He'd disappear Friday night and reappear Monday morning. Charming, apologetic, full of thoughtful gestures. A playlist for my moods. A note slipped into my purse. A photo of a painting that reminded him of me. I wanted to believe it. I told myself I was overthinking it. Until I wasn't. One Sunday night, I got curious. I opened Instagram and searched his handle. Nothing new on his grid, but I noticed something odd. He had a private tagged photo. I clicked. It was from a woman. Smiling. In a kitchen that wasn't his. Her caption said, "Weekend rituals with my love." The date matched the weekend. He said he was out of town. I clicked her profile. She'd been posting him for months. Always on weekends. Always from a different city. I didn't confront him right away. I watched. I waited. The next Friday I asked, "Are you free this weekend?" He smiled, apologetic. "Can't. My goddaughter's birthday. Out of town." I kissed him goodbye and followed him. He didn't drive to a family event. He drove 2 hours south to a quiet suburb. She opened the door before he knocked. He kissed her. The way he kissed me. I confronted him the next week. He didn't deny it. He just sat there calm and said, "I didn't lie." I compartmentalized. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No," he said. "But maybe it'll help you understand." I stared at him, stunned. "You had a schedule. You planned your lies like shifts." He nodded. "It worked. Until it didn't." I left. He didn't follow. It's been 6 months. Sometimes I still think about his weekday tenderness, how perfectly he fit into my life from Monday to Friday. Then I remember that comfort isn't always connection, and some people love best when it's convenient. We met at a rooftop book swap. I was standing by the wine table, thumbing through a dog-eared copy of Women Who Run with the Wolves, when he walked up behind me and said, "That book taught me more about women than any textbook ever did." I turned, already bracing for pretension. But he was calm, clean-shaven. His accent, French, maybe North African, curved his words in a way that made them feel warmer than they were. "You're saying you've read it?" I asked. "Twice," he said, smiling. "I'm a therapist. It's required reading if you want to understand the feminine unconscious." That word, therapist, landed like a charm. I just started seeing one myself, and the idea of someone who already got it, who spoke the language of inner wounds and shadow work, was magnetic. His name was Nadir. It meant rare, he told me. Like a lunar eclipse. I should have known then. Men who compare themselves to celestial events are usually looking for worship, not connection. From the start, Nadir made me feel like I was being studied, but not in a cold way. He listened like every word I said was a puzzle piece. he was gently slotting into place. Our first date was at his apartment. He said he didn't believe in artificial spaces for emotional energy. It was filled with books, low lighting, and a massive rug that smelled faintly of sandalwood and something more primal. We sat on the floor. No shoes. No small talk. He poured tea and asked, "Do you feel safe in your body?" I blinked. "Right now. In general." I hesitated. "Sometimes." He nodded like he already knew. "Your posture tells me you over-accommodate. You lean in too much. That's usually rooted in abandonment trauma." I hadn't told him anything about my past yet. I felt seen. Or maybe just exposed. Either way, I stayed. He touched me like he was mapping triggers. Soft. Then firm. Pausing every few seconds to ask, "Do you like that?" Or, "What does this bring up for you?" He didn't rush. He coaxed. And when he finally entered me, he whispered, "Let go. I'm holding the container." It was the most intense sex I'd had in years. Not because it was wild, but because it felt curated. Like he was performing therapy through touch. I came twice. The second time, I cried. He held me after, tracing my shoulder blade. "This is a grief release," he murmured. I nodded into his chest. It didn't occur to me that maybe I was just overwhelmed, and he was naming it for me to tighten the bond. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other constantly. He insisted on calling our time together sessions, even when we were just eating or watching films. "You're not just dating me," he said. "You're healing with me." He asked questions that burrowed into me. "Did your father ever apologize when he hurt you? What was your earliest memory of being silenced? Do you find pain erotic?" I told him things I'd never admitted aloud. About the time I stopped eating in college. About the man who pulled my hair too hard and called it love. About the dream I kept having where I was drowning in velvet. He never looked shocked. He just nodded and said, "That makes sense." His approval felt addictive. Like every time I unraveled, he gave me permission to exist. But that permission came with a price. It started small. He'd say things like, "That's a trauma response," when I wanted to leave early. Or, "You're disassociating," when I didn't laugh at his jokes. Once, I told him I needed space. Just a night alone. He frowned and said, "That's your avoidant attachment flaring up. It's okay, I can hold it for you." I didn't know what that meant. But I stayed. Because it felt easier than trying to explain my need to be alone to someone who claimed to know me better than I knew myself. One night, I made the mistake of sharing something funny from a group chat. A meme about therapy culture. He didn't laugh. "You mock what you don't understand," he said. "It's just a joke." He stared at me. Humor is often a defense. "Oh my God, Nadir. Can we just be people for 5 minutes?" He stood up. "You're resisting intimacy. That's okay. I'll wait for you on the other side of this." He made it sound noble. Like he was being patient with my sickness. I texted my own therapist the next day. She asked, "Is he licensed?" I paused. "I think so. Have you checked?" I hadn't. That night, I searched his name. No license. No credentials. No trace of him in any psychology database. What I did find was a Medium article he wrote 2 years ago titled, "Emotional Alchemy: How to Seduce Through Somatic Empathy." It wasn't about therapy. It was about power. How to gain it. Keep it. Wield it through language and touch. He called himself a mirror for the fractured feminine. I felt sick. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He said, "I never claimed to be a clinical therapist." "You did. At the book swap." I said, "I guide. You assumed the rest." That's manipulative. That's projection. That word. I'd heard it so many times I'd started saying it to myself in the mirror. He stepped closer. "I never lied. I just reflected. Everything you saw in me, you put there." I said, "You made me doubt my own thoughts." He smiled. "Because they weren't yours. They were inherited beliefs. I helped you hear your truth." "No," I whispered. "You replaced it with yours." I left. He didn't chase me. 2 days later, I got a voice note. "I hope you find someone who sees you like I did. But I doubt they'll hold you as bravely." Delete. It's been 7 months. I still flinch when a man says trauma-informed. Still question whether my instincts are mine or echoes of his voice. But I'm learning that therapy isn't foreplay. That validation, when weaponized, is just control in a velvet glove. And that anyone who tries to heal you before they hold you wants power, not partnership. It started with a song. Not just any song, something obscure. French jazz with a slow, smoky trumpet and a woman's voice like melting candle wax. I was humming it under my breath at a friend's dinner party, wine in one hand, out of place in a room full of couples. He heard me from across the table. "Camille Berdault?" he asked. I looked up, surprised. "You know her?" "She's on my Sunday playlist," he said. That was how it began. Not with sparks or flirtation or a swipe, but with music. Like the soundtrack had already queued us up. His name was Jalen. Unusual. Soft-spoken. The kind of man who looked like he'd cry during poetry readings, but fuck you like he'd been starving. We talked all night. Shared AirPods in the kitchen while people played card games around us. He played me a track I'd never heard before, an instrumental that made my chest ache. By the end of the night, he'd created a shared playlist and invited me to it. "Let's build something slow," he said. I should have known. Anything built slowly gives you time to forget it might collapse. We began trading songs like secrets. I'd add something flirty, he'd counter with something aching. I'd send a track with a bass line that throbbed under the skin. He'd respond with a soft piano solo that felt like it had been written just to say my name. Music became our foreplay. We hadn't even kissed yet, but I was already wet when I heard certain chords. He'd text me lyrics with no context. Just a line, a timestamp, a feeling. By week 2, the playlist felt alive. It read my moods better than I could. On days when I was anxious, it leaned ambient. On days I felt bold, it pulsed with synths and percussion. I'd wake up to new additions that matched my dreams, songs I hadn't mentioned, but that somehow aligned completely. I asked him once jokingly, "Are you psychic?" He replied, "No, just observant." The first time we slept together, he didn't undress me right away. He played a song, slow, metallic, sensual. Something from Iceland, I think. He stood behind me, kissed my shoulder, and said, "Don't rush. Let the sound move first." So we moved with the music. He kissed me like lyrics. Bit my bottom lip with rhythm. His hand between my thighs matched the beat perfectly. And when I came, God, it felt like I was syncing with a track only he could hear. Afterward, we lay there in silence while a harp solo played softly from his phone. He whispered, "You're already in the playlist." I thought he meant it metaphorically. He didn't. Over the next few weeks, the playlist grew. We kept adding. Over 300 songs. It became our ritual. We wouldn't say goodnight or thinking of you. We'd just drop a track and let it speak for us. But then things got strange. I began noticing that the songs he added seemed to know things I hadn't told him. A track called "Sleepless in Midtown," the day after I spent a restless night at my sister's place in Midtown. A melancholic acoustic song titled "She's Pulling Away," after I canceled a date to be alone. A remix with the lyric, "You're not texting me back, but I'm still in your head." I stared at that one for a long time. Because I hadn't texted back. Not for hours. And I was thinking of him. Right as he added the song. I told myself I was imagining it. He was just intuitive. Reading between the lines. But then came the timestamps. It started subtle. He'd add songs at oddly specific moments, after I'd just left a location. After I'd posted a story. After I'd deleted one. A track called "In Your Building" was added exactly 10 minutes after I walked into mine. He never asked where I was. He never had to. I asked him once casually, "How do you always know what to send?" He smiled. "You're easy to feel." Something about the way he said it made me cold. I started testing him. I'd sit in silence. Post nothing for a day. Turn off my location. He'd still add songs that matched my mood exactly. One day, I cried in the shower after seeing a photo of my ex. 2 hours later, "Your Ghost" by Greg Laswell. A song I hadn't heard in years. I asked, "Have you been in my phone?" He replied with a voice note. "Why would I need to hack you, amorous? You wear your feelings in every breath." I wanted to believe him, but something didn't feel right anymore. I stopped adding songs. He didn't. In fact, they started coming more frequently. At night. At 3 a.m. Songs with lyrics like, "You're drifting. I feel it. She's deleting me." I was always watching. I blocked him. Removed myself from the playlist. Deleted the app. 3 days later, I got an email. No subject line. Just a single embedded Spotify link. The title of the song? "You Can't Mute What You Made." I moved cities a week later. It wasn't just about him, but it was enough to push me forward. New number. New job. New apartment. I didn't post anything for months. Then one morning, I got a notification. A new playlist. Created by a user I didn't recognize. The title, "For Her Ears Only." Every track was a memory. Our first dance. The song we first kissed to. The harp solo from the night, I came so hard I cried. And at the end, one final track. Silence. 11 minutes long. Just silence. But when I played it on speakers, I realized there was a faint sound underneath. Breathing. Mine. I don't use Spotify anymore. I don't share playlists. And I don't ever trust someone who says, let's build something slow. Because sometimes, slow is just another word for stalking. And intimacy? It's the perfect cover for surveillance. Somewhere in the middle of our third week texting, he said something that made my stomach drop. God, I love your sarcasm. Especially that line about the almond milk guy. You absolutely destroyed him. I froze. I hadn't told him about the almond milk guy. I'd told my girls. In our private group chat. With screenshots. I even joked, if this man says nut milk one more time, I'm reporting him to the dairy board. It wasn't posted anywhere. It wasn't public. It was a stupid inside joke among 4 women who'd known each other since college. And now he was quoting it. Verbatim. His name was Idris. Tall. Thoughtful. A little too charming. The kind of man who texted full sentences and used ellipses like they meant something. We met at a mutual friend's art show. He offered me the last glass of wine and said, beautiful women shouldn't have to settle for carbonated water unless they choose to. I laughed. He smirked. It was a moment. He asked for my number instead of my Instagram. I liked that. We started texting the next day. He was clever. Funny. Self-aware. He'd flirt without pushing. Ask questions that made me feel interesting. He even remembered things I barely remembered telling him. My favorite ice cream flavor. The book that made me cry in high school. The name of my childhood dog. I pay attention, he said. At first, it felt flattering. Later, it felt like a threat. The almond milk comment wasn't the first red flag, but it was the first one I noticed. After that, I started looking back through our messages. I'd scroll, reread, compare. And I realized something. He always knew too much. He'd reference tweets I hadn't liked, let alone posted. He'd mention locations I'd been in without tagging. He knew about a dress I returned. A conversation I had only mentioned to my friends through a screenshot. At first, I thought maybe he had access to my social media. But I checked. Nothing. My accounts were untouched. My logins unbothered. But then it hit me. The group chat. There were 5 of us in the chat. Me, Talia, Noor, Cindy, and Val. We called it the Coven. We used it for everything, venting, thirst traps, red flag breakdowns, and of course, Tinder screenshots. I searched the chat. Found the almond milk joke. Exactly as he'd said it. Then I found more. A voice note I'd sent about Idris's emotional intelligence kink. A meme I made about his overly curated bookshelf. A message where I said, he's hot, but something about him feels too curated. Like he's been reading my mind. He had. Because he was reading our chat. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to be sure. So I tested him. I sent a fake message to the group. He just texted me again. I think he's gonna say soul connection tonight. If he does, I'm out. For hours later, over dinner, he leaned in, stroked my wrist, and said, you ever feel like this is a soul connection? I stared at him. He smiled softly, like he knew exactly what he was doing. I didn't storm out. I didn't confront him. I watched. And I crafted a plan. The next morning, I called each of the girls separately, told them what I suspected. They were horrified, furious. Some cried, Noor said, I had a weird feeling about him before. I just thought you were into the intensity. Cindy asked, you think he's hacked one of us? I did. I just didn't know which one. So we staged it. A fake conversation. I told the group, I'm thinking of surprising him with a weekend trip. Somewhere warm. Maybe Valencia. We waited. That night, he sent me a photo of a beach. Caption. Random thought. Ever been to Valencia? Gotcha. I confronted him the next day. Which one of them gave you access? He didn't flinch. Access to what? My group chat. He blinked too slow. I stepped closer. You've been quoting things I've never sent you. Things I've only said to my friends. You think I wouldn't notice? Still, he didn't panic. He just sighed. You're smart, he said. I was hoping you'd figure it out. He said it like it was a compliment. I wanted to slap him. Instead, I said, why? He shrugged. I wanted to understand you. The real you. Not the curated version. You mean the private version. That's the only version that matters. You violated me. He tilted his head. No. I paid attention. You stole. I listened. Through AF asterisk 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 ing backdoor Idris. He stepped forward. His voice dropped. You don't get it, Celine. I loved the you that you didn't even show me yet. That wasn't love. He smiled bitter. Then why did it feel like it? I left. Blocked him. Changed my passwords. My number. My entire digital presence. Later, we found out he'd gotten access by cloning Val's old phone. She'd upgraded, sold the device, and somehow he'd gotten it, restored it, accessed her apps, and read everything. For weeks. Months, maybe. He knew everything. Our jokes. Our fears. Our inner circle. He'd memorized me from the inside out. It's been nearly a year. Sometimes I still hesitate before speaking in group chats. Still wonder if I'm being watched. Still feel like someone's collecting my words in a folder somewhere, waiting to use them to mirror me back to myself. But I've learned something. Intimacy offered too early isn't real. And anyone who wants to know your secrets before you've given them isn't curious. They're hunting. She said, I've been waiting for you, the moment we met. Not in a flirty, playful way. Not like a pickup line. She said it like a prophecy. I just stepped into a bookstore, one of those quiet, hidden ones that smells like dust and dried lavender. She was standing by the poetry shelf, holding a copy of The Prophet. Her eyes met mine, and she smiled like she already knew me. I've been waiting for you. I laughed, a little thrown. You must say that to all the guys who wander into the roomy section. She stepped closer. Only the ones who carry silence in their shoulders. What the hell did that even mean? But she was stunning. Dark curls, long neck, a voice like late-night radio. She wore a rust-colored dress that clung to her hips like it had been sewn there. I didn't walk away. I asked her name. Ziva. It meant radiance, she said. Of course it did. We had coffee 2 hours later. She didn't ask about my job or my hobbies. She asked about my dreams. What keeps you up at night? When did you first stop believing in magic? Who do you miss the most when it rains? At first, it was intense, but in that intoxicating way that makes you think this is something rare, something deep. Every answer I gave, she mirrored back with something even more vulnerable. It felt like we were peeling each other open. She said, this isn't a coincidence. There are no accidents when energy aligns. I said, you sound like a tarot deck. She smiled. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just the one meant to find you. We slept together on the second night. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rushed. She came to my place with a bottle of red and a playlist that felt like it had been curated from my teenage fantasies. Moody, slow, vocals like sighs. She stood in my kitchen barefoot, licking wine off her bottom lip, and said, I've pictured this moment so many times, it feels like déjà vu. I asked how she could know that already. She traced her finger down my chest. Because I felt you before. We didn't make love. We collided. She kissed like she was trying to memorize me from the inside out. Said things like, I want to know what your bones sound like when they break for someone. When I came, she whispered, I knew you'd sound like that. After, she curled into me like we'd done this 100 times. I should have been creeped out. Instead, I kissed her forehead and said, You feel familiar. She whispered, It's because we've done this before. The cracks started small. She'd finish my sentences. Not in a cute, overlapping way, but with eerie accuracy. I'd be halfway through a story and she'd say, And then you left without saying goodbye, because you thought silence was kinder. She was right. Too right. She knew things I hadn't told her. That my mother died suddenly. That I used to collect feathers as a kid. That I had a scar on my back from falling through a glass door when I was 8. I asked, How do you know that? She smiled. I listened better than most. I should have questioned it, but she made me feel chosen. And chosen is a powerful drug. One night, we were lying in bed, and she said, You looked so peaceful that day in the park. I almost didn't want to interrupt you. I turned my head. What? She blinked. The day we met. I saw you reading on the bench before you came to the bookstore. I sat up. I didn't see you there. She shrugged. You were lost in your book. I hadn't told her I'd been at the park before the bookstore. No one knew that. Later, I checked my phone's photo library. There was a candid shot I took of the trees. Zoomed in the background. There she was, sitting 2 benches away, watching. I confronted her. You followed me. She didn't deny it. I saw you at the gallery 2 weeks before we spoke. You looked familiar. So I found your name, your socials. I listened to your music, read your essays. I knew we'd connect. I just had to wait for the opening. I stared at her. That's not fate. That's stalking. She frowned. Don't reduce it. I felt you before I knew you. My body knew. My intuition knew. I just gave us a nudge. You orchestrated everything. I recognized you. That's different. My skin crawled. I remembered all the songs she'd added to the playlist. All the books she randomly quoted. The exact brand of incense she happened to like. The same one I used to burn in college. Nothing was spontaneous. Nothing was real. She'd built a version of me from fragments. And then played the perfect counterpart. I tried to pull away. She didn't take it well. She cried. Screamed. Said I was abandoning a soul contract. That I was regressing because I couldn't handle intensity. She sent me a poem she wrote about me. Posted it online. Tagged me. Then she started showing up at places I hadn't mentioned, cafes, bookstores, a bar I hadn't been to in months. She'd sit across the room. Never speak. Just exist. Like a shadow that wore perfume. I changed my routines. Stopped posting. Moved apartments. She still found ways to let me know she was watching. A song request on a radio show I used to listen to. A package at my door, no return address, containing a book with the dedication highlighted. For the one I always knew would come. I started therapy. Told them everything. My therapist said, obsession can disguise itself as destiny, especially when someone's skilled at making you feel chosen. I asked, how do I stop needing that feeling? She said, by choosing yourself before anyone else has the chance. It's been 10 months. Sometimes I still think of her voice, low and electric, saying, I've been waiting for you. Sometimes I wonder if she's waiting still. But I've learned something. When someone knows too much too soon, it's not a sign. It's a setup. And love, real love doesn't arrive already knowing your scars. It arrives willing to earn them. The first time I saw him lose his temper, he was defending me. We were standing in line at a taco truck, the kind of late-night spot that smells like heaven and regret. Some guy behind us made a crude comment, something about my legs and how they deserved their own national anthem. Before I could even turn around, Elias stepped between us. Say that again, he said, voice low, shoulders squared. The guy backed off. Elias turned to me, jaw still tight. You okay? I nodded, stunned. He kissed my forehead and said, nobody talks to you like that. Not while I'm here. Part of me felt grateful. Protected. The other part? A little uneasy. I ignored the second part. Because that's what you do when someone fights for you like a knight in a Netflix adaptation. You tell yourself they're intense because they care. That it's hot when someone defends your honor like you're the last pastry in the bakery. But I've learned that sometimes protection is just possession with good PR. Elias was magnetic. He had that quiet, brooding energy that made women lean in without realizing it. He wasn't loud, but when he spoke, people listened. He looked at you like there was a storm behind his eyes, and you were the only one who could calm it. He was attentive in a way that bordered on clairvoyant. Texted me every morning before I opened my eyes. Showed up with soup when I had a cold. Memorized my coffee order, my cycle, the way I curled my toes when I was overthinking. You don't need to explain yourself to me, he'd say. I just get you. And for a while he did. He always picked me up from work, even when I said I didn't mind taking the train. He insisted on walking me home, even from places 2 blocks away. He said things like, I sleep better when I know you're safe, and you don't have to be strong for me. It felt romantic, like the kind of love you secretly hope for when no one's looking. But then, he started showing up unannounced. At first, it was cute. I was in the neighborhood, he'd say, holding pastries. Then it was every day. I just missed you. Then it was late at night, tapping on my window, saying he had a bad feeling. I asked how he got up to my fire escape. He said he took the scaffolding. I laughed. You're ridiculous. He didn't laugh back. I'd rather look ridiculous than lose you. The first time he got jealous, it was over a coworker. My friend Jamie had tagged me in a story, just the 2 of us laughing over drinks. Totally innocent. I was wearing a turtleneck, for God's sake. Elias called me 10 minutes after it went up. Who's he? Jamie. He's gay. That's supposed to make me feel better? You're not serious. I don't like the way he looks at you. He literally asked if he could borrow my bronzer last week. That's not the point. What is the point? The point is, he said, voice flat, you're mine. I laughed. I thought he was being cheeky. He wasn't. After that, the rules started piling up. No posting pictures without running them by him. No going out without texting him the guest list. No flirty emojis, even with female friends, because it sends the wrong message. He said he trusted me. It was other people he didn't trust. You don't understand how guys think, he'd say. I've been that guy. I know when someone's trying to slide in. I told him I could handle myself. He told me that's what people say right before they get hurt. I started lying. Tiny things at first. Said I was working late when I was actually grabbing drinks with a friend. Said my phone died when I just didn't want to text for a while. I told myself it was harmless. That he loved hard, and I just needed to be patient with the parts of him that hadn't healed yet. Then he found out about one of the lies. I had gone to a gallery opening with my friend Marin. I didn't tell him because I didn't want the interrogation afterward. I just wanted to enjoy myself. He showed up. At the gallery. Uninvited. I had a feeling, he said. Are you following me? I call it looking out for you. You're scaring me. He didn't flinch. I'd rather scare you than bury you. That night, I locked the bathroom door while I cried. The next morning, there were roses on my doorstep and a note that said, I lost my mind because I love you more than my sanity. I should have left then, but I didn't. It wasn't until he punched a hole in my wall that I finally saw it. We were arguing, something stupid. I wanted to go to a weekend retreat with friends. He said it was too far, and what if something happened? I said I was going anyway. He stood there, jaw clenched, breathing hard. And then boom. Fist through drywall. I screamed. He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. The next day he apologized. Said he was going to get help. That he'd never hurt me. That the wall wasn't me, it was everything else. I told him I believed him. But I didn't. I packed my things while he was at work. Left the key on the counter. Blocked him on everything. 2 days later, I got a voicemail. 30 seconds of silence, then. I still sleep with your necklace under my pillow. Click. It's been over a year. I still flinch when a man raises his voice. Still hesitate before posting a photo with friends. Still look over my shoulder when I walk home late. But I talk about it now. Because possessiveness isn't protection. And love, real love, doesn't make you feel like a prisoner wrapped in silk. It doesn't watch you like prey. It watches with you. And lets you breathe. I met him at a wine tasting I didn't even want to go to. It was one of those corporate mixers with too much cologne and too many people pretending they know the difference between earthy and oaky. I was halfway through a glass of something red and overpriced when a man leaned in and said, You look like you're trying very hard not to be here. He wasn't wrong. I turned. He had a smirk that said he knew how good his timing was, and eyes that made you want to say something clever, just to keep his attention for 5 more seconds. His name was Shane. He was charming in that practiced, just a bit too effortless way. He didn't flirt right away. He asked questions. Laughed when I was sarcastic. Offered to walk me to my car even though it wasn't late, and I wasn't wearing heels. When he asked for my number, he didn't say, We should hang out sometime. He said, There's a jazz bar near here I think you'd pretend not to like but secretly would. I smiled. When? Tomorrow. From the beginning, Shane made me feel like I was the only person in the room. Every text felt curated, every touch calculated for maximum electricity. He wasn't just good at conversation, he was good at presence. He made space for me on his couch, in his bed, in his world. But never on weekends. That was the first red flag I ignored. He never outright said he was unavailable, he just always had something. A work trip, a guy's night, a cousin's wedding in upstate New York. He'd text me photos of his drinks, blurry shots of hotel lobbies, vague captions like, missing this view followed by a wink emoji. During the week, though, he was magnetic. We cooked pasta together in his kitchen while the sauce burned, and he kissed my neck between apologies. We lay naked on his couch watching terrible documentaries and laughing like we'd known each other for years. He'd trace circles on my back and say things like, You make me feel still. I believed him. God help me, I did. There was a moment, 3 months in, when I started to feel the shift. We were at my apartment, wrapped in sheets and breathless from the kind of sex that leaves you unsure where your body ends and theirs begins. He was lying on his stomach, head turned toward me. Your trouble, he said with a grin. Why? Because I think I could fall for you. That sentence felt like a match to dry leaves. But then he added, if things were different. I blinked. Different how? He smiled, closed his eyes, and said, Don't ruin the moment. I should have pressed him. Instead, I kissed him. Hard. Like I could change the subject with my mouth. The unraveling started with a tagged photo. A friend of mine, Jamie, nosy and blessedly petty, texted me a screenshot. You seeing this? It was Shane. At a birthday dinner. sitting next to a woman with her hand on his thigh. The caption said, "Happy birthday to the man I love most in this world. My partner. My person." I stared at it until my eyes blurred. It had 117 likes. 24 comments. Heart emojis. "You two are perfect. Finally someone who deserves you. Look at this love." I felt like I'd been sucker punched. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there. And then I texted him, "Dinner tomorrow?" He replied instantly, "Of course." He showed up like nothing was wrong, with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. He kissed my forehead, kicked off his shoes, and asked if I'd missed him. I said yes. I poured the wine. I waited until the food was on our plates before I asked, "So, who's Ava?" He froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. "The woman who tagged you in that birthday photo," I added, voice steady. "The one who called you her partner." He didn't deny it. Didn't even try. He put down his fork and exhaled. "Noelle, I was going to tell you. We're you. We've been in a weird place. I didn't know what we were anymore. You live with her." "Yes." "You sleep next to her." He didn't answer. "You're in a relationship." He nodded slowly. "It's complicated." I laughed. It was either that or throw the pad thai at his face. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. "I didn't lie to hurt you," he said. "I just didn't want to lose this. This. You. Us. There is no us, Shane. There never was." His eyes didn't flinch. "But you felt it." "I know you did. And that was what made it worse. Because I had felt it. And he'd used that. He tried to gaslight me. Said we never defined anything. That I assumed exclusivity. That I was reading into things. That he never promised me anything he couldn't give. But you said you were falling for me." I said if things were different. "That's not a loophole. That's a betrayal. You knew I was busy on weekends. You never asked. You never offered." He stood. Paced. Rubbed the back of his neck like this was hard for him. "I didn't mean for it to get this deep." "It didn't get deep, Shane. You dug." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw it. Not guilt. Not regret. Resentment. Like I'd broken some unspoken rule by calling him out. "I should go," he said. I opened the door. He walked out. Not a single word. He texted me a week later. "I miss you." Then, "I can't stop thinking about you." Then, "She doesn't get me the way you do." I blocked him. A month later, I saw a new post. Him and Ava. At the beach. Caption. "Every day I choose you." I didn't feel rage. I felt pity. For her. For me. For every woman out there who thinks she's the only one, when she's just the most convenient one. It's been 6 months. The first time I saw her, she was barefoot in a bookstore. Not in a cute, quirky way. In a "this floor belongs to me" way. She was standing in the philosophy section, holding a copy of The Art of Loving like it was a sacred text. Her hair was down to her waist. Her dress was linen loose, and somehow still made her look like temptation in human form. I wasn't supposed to talk to her. I was there to buy a gift. Get in, get out. But then she looked at me, eyes the color of dusk, and said, "You carry grief in your hips." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She smiled, slow and knowing. "Most men carry it in their chest. Yours is lower. You've been holding on to something for a long time." I should have laughed. Walked away. Instead, I said, "How did you know that?" She stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell her, amber, smoke, and something floral I couldn't name. "I listen," she said. "Most people don't." Her name was Syra. We had tea that afternoon in a tucked-away cafe that didn't believe in clocks. I asked what she did, and she said, "I guide people back to their center." "You're a therapist?" She laughed. "No, I'm a healer. Labels trap energy." She talked about alignment, somatic memory, emotional detoxing, the way the body holds trauma like a house holds dust. Normally, I'd call bullshit, but something about her made my skepticism feel small. She spoke with the kind of calm that made you want to confess things. I told her about my breakup. The panic attacks no one knew about. That sometimes I woke up feeling like I'd been screaming in my sleep. She didn't flinch. She touched my hand and said, "You don't need fixing. You need unlayering." Our first session was at her apartment. Candles. Incense. A floor covered in pillows and fabrics that looked like they'd been stitched by moonlight. She asked if I was comfortable being touched. I said yes. She told me to lie down. Breathe. She placed her hands on my chest and whispered, "You're safe now." And for the first time in months, I believed it. She never kissed me that night. But when I left, my skin still buzzed. 2 days later, we slept together. If you can call it that. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't casual. It felt like a ritual. She didn't just touch me, she read me. Like each part of my body had a story she was determined to hear. Afterward, she curled against me and said, "You're opening. I can feel it." I didn't know what that meant, but I wanted to. We started seeing each other every day. Not just romantically. She became my guide. She led me through meditations, breath work, body scans. She said my root chakra was blocked, and that's why I struggled with self-worth. She gave me herbal tinctures to pull the pain out. Designed a morning ritual for me that involved chanting, dry brushing, and a very specific kind of tea brewed with intention. I let her in, into my space, my mind, my routines. She started asking questions like, why are you still working that job if it drains you? And who benefits from your burnout? I didn't have good answers. She said, that's the programming. You've been conditioned to believe suffering is noble. I quit my job 2 weeks later. She called it a breakthrough. At first, it felt like healing. But then came the rules. No caffeine, it clouds intuition. No processed food, it clogs the soul. No contact with people who don't support your awakening. That last one included my best friend, my brother, and my ex, who I was still friends with. They keep you small, she said. You're expanding now. They won't understand. I argued. She cried, said I was rejecting her energy, that I wasn't ready to heal, and I couldn't stand the idea of losing her. So I stayed, and I obeyed. I gave up my apartment, moved into hers. She said it was more efficient to share energy in the same space. At first, it was bliss. We had sex like we were inventing it. Woke up tangled in sunlit sheets and fell asleep wrapped in incense smoke and affirmations. She whispered mantras into my mouth, told me I was transforming, that I'd never be the same. She was right. I wasn't. I barely recognized myself. And then, I started to question things. Not big things, just small moments that didn't add up. Like the clients she said she was helping, I never saw them. Or the donation money she collected for her retreat fund that somehow paid for new silk robes and imported rose water. I asked where the money went. She said, "Why does that matter if you're living in abundance?" I said, "I'm broke." She said, "That's your scarcity wound talking." I said, "I feel like I'm losing myself." She said, "That's your ego resisting growth." It wasn't a conversation. It was a diagnosis. One night, I told her I wanted a break. Just a few days to think. To reconnect with my family. To remember who I was before all this. She wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You're not ready." I said, "I need space." Her voice shifted. Quiet. Sharp. "If you walk out that door, you'll lose everything we've built." I laughed. Built? Or absorbed? She slapped me. Hard. And then gasped like I had hit her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "That wasn't me. That was the wound speaking." I left. She screamed after me, "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when your ego shatters." I didn't. It's been nearly a year. I got a normal job again. Reconnected with my brother. Started therapy with someone who doesn't wear crystals as currency. But sometimes, I still hear her voice in my head when I doubt myself. Still crave that high of being seen. But I remind myself, being worshipped isn't the same thing as being loved. And surrendering to someone else's light means forgetting you had your own. He called me Lena the first time we had sex. It was soft, barely above a whisper, like he was moaning into the curve of my throat, but I heard it. I froze. He didn't notice, or pretended not to. I told myself I misheard, that he said Mael, and I was just riding the high of too many orgasms and too little sleep. But the second time he said it again, clearer. "God, Lena." I pulled away. He blinked, confused. "What's wrong?" I searched his face for guilt. Found none. "You called me Lena." "No, I didn't." "You did." He smiled. "Don't be dramatic." The way he said it made me feel like I'd imagined the whole thing. Like I was the one who'd brought a ghost into the bed. But I hadn't. He had. His name was Kale. We met at a rooftop party I wasn't invited to. I was there with a friend of a friend, sipping something pink and overpriced when he walked over and asked, "Do you believe in second chances?" I raised an eyebrow. At life or at love? Both. He had a face built for apologies, soft eyes, strong jaw, that slightly wounded look that made women want to fix him without asking why he was broken in the first place. We talked for hours. He told me about his childhood, his dreams, his ex-girlfriend, briefly. It ended messy, he said. She wasn't who I thought she was. I didn't ask questions. I was too busy being flattered that someone that haunted wanted to haunt me next. Cale made me feel seen. Not the way other guys did, with compliments or cliches. He noticed things. The way I stirred my drink counterclockwise. How I bit my lip when I was thinking. That I wore silk camisoles under my sweaters because I liked how the secret softness felt against my skin. He said things like, "You smell like the first night of summer," and "I feel like I've known you forever." I told myself it was fate. But fate doesn't come with a script. And Cale was reading lines. He made playlists for me. At first, I thought it was sweet, until I noticed every song was a breakup anthem. Or worse, a please take me back serenade. He once played one while we were in bed. Naked. Breathless. The song ended with the words, "I'd do anything to have you again." He kissed me after and whispered, "You have no idea what this means to me." I didn't. But I would. We were 3 weeks in when I found the photos. I was looking for a charger in his apartment drawer when I found a stack of prints, actual photographs, glossy and deliberate. Him and a woman. Tall. Elegant. Hair like mine. Smile like mine, if mine had been through a few more heartbreaks. In every photo, they looked like they were in love. In one of them, she was wearing a necklace. The same one he gave me 2 days earlier. I felt my stomach twist. I put everything back. Didn't say a word. That night, he made me dinner. Lit candles. Told me he'd never felt this way about anyone since her. I finally asked, what was her name? He paused just a second too long. Lena. I nodded. You ever call me that by mistake? He smiled. No. Of course not. Liar. The unraveling was slow. He started comparing us. Not directly. Not at first. She used to make this dish, but yours is better. She would have hated this movie. You actually get it. She never liked to cuddle after. I love that with you. At first, it felt like I was winning. Like I was being chosen. Then I realized I wasn't being chosen at all. I was being cast. I confronted him. We were in his kitchen. He was slicing limes. Barefoot. Humming. I said, do you still miss her? He stopped humming. I'm not stupid, Cale. You're not over her. He didn't deny it. He looked at me like I'd just spoiled a surprise ending. I'm healing, he said. And you're part of that. I stepped back. I'm not your therapy. You're not. You're my closure. I felt like I'd been slapped and kissed at the same time. That's not love, I said. It's more than love. It's transformation. I laughed. You're trying to rewrite your past. And you're using me as the stand-in. He didn't even flinch. She left when I needed her most. And I'm supposed to make up for that? No, he said. You're supposed to prove she was wrong. I left. Blocked him. Deleted the playlists. Threw away the necklace. Burned the silk camisole he liked the most. He texted me from a different number a week later. You should have stayed. We were almost there. There. Where everything felt familiar. Where I wasn't me. I was a memory in the shape of a woman. It's been 5 months. Sometimes I wonder if he found someone new. Someone who looks like Lena. Laughs like Lena. Sounds enough like her when she moans that he can pretend it's 2019 again. But I'm not angry anymore. I just pity the next girl. Because when a man doesn't want to heal, he recreates and calls it love. There are 2 kinds of weirdos you meet on dating apps. The first are the obvious ones, shirtless in a bathroom mirror guys, the sapiosexuals who think reading one Murakami novel makes them profound, and the ones who open with DTF. Like that's a romantic overture. The second kind, they hide it. They're charming. They quote your favorite authors, ask about your pets, and laugh at your jokes like you're the funniest person alive. And then slowly they unravel. I met one of those. His name was Reese. He had a quiet smile in his profile pic, the kind that says, I've got secrets, but they're sexy secrets. He was sitting on a park bench with a cup of coffee, wearing a navy pea coat and round glasses. No shirtless gym selfies. No weird filters. Just a clean aesthetic and a bio that said, recovering philosophy major. Good with my hands. That last part should have been a red flag. But I was bored, a little tipsy, and emotionally available in the way a half-eaten pint of Ben & Jerry's is at 1 a.m. We matched. He messaged first. Reese, are you as witty as your profile suggests, or is that just a clever ploy? Me, depends. Are you as mysterious as your peacoat, or is that just a clever disguise? We met for drinks 3 days later. He was taller than I expected, soft-spoken. He smelled like sandalwood and old books. He made me laugh so hard I snorted gin and tonic through my nose, which, in retrospect, was probably the moment he decided I was the one. He asked a lot of questions: where I worked, my favorite coffee order, my commute, the name of my cat. At the time I thought, wow, he's really attentive. Looking back, red flag number 2. But I was charmed. I'll admit it. We ended the night with a kiss outside a bookstore, his hand on the small of my back like he was claiming me just a little. He texted me the next morning. Dreamt about you. You were reading Sylvia Plath and laughing. Even your dreams are poetic. Swoon. Slightly dramatic, but swoon. We went on 2 more dates. He brought me pastries from this tiny cafe I'd once mentioned in passing. He remembered my cat's name, Machi, and bought him a little knitted collar. He kissed the top of my head when we hugged and said things like, "You're safe with me," as if I'd been in danger before. After the 3rd date, I told him I wasn't feeling it. I tried to be gentle. "You're lovely. I just don't think we're a match long term." He didn't argue. He smiled, nodded, and said, "Thanks for being honest." I respect that. I remember thinking, wow, that was mature. Maybe I am good at this dating thing. Oh, sweet summer child. That was the last time I spoke to him. Until I saw him again. It was a week later. I was at my favorite coffee shop, the one 3 blocks from my apartment where I go to write and pretend I'm more productive than I actually am. I ordered my usual oat milk latte, extra hot, no judgment, and turned to sit down. Reese was there, at a table in the corner, reading the bell jar. He looked up, smiled, and said, "Funny seeing you here." I laughed, nervously. "Yeah, small city." He didn't try to talk to me, just nodded and went back to his book. I told myself it was a coincidence, but then it happened again, and again. The dog park on Sunday, the bookstore on Tuesday, the same row at the movie theater, twice. And always the same story. He'd smile, say hello, and act like it was nothing. I started to feel like I was being haunted by a very polite ghost. The final straw. I was walking home one night, earbuds in, half listening to a podcast about cults and probably manifesting bad vibes, when I stopped at a crosswalk. I turned. Reese was across the street, just standing there, watching me. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood still under a flickering street lamp like a scene from a psychological thriller that gets banned in Australia. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found a note under my apartment door. Just a slip of paper. No envelope. My name written in neat cursive. Inside, "I miss the way you say my name like it's a secret." No signature. No contact. Just that. I did what any rational woman would do. I screamed into a pillow, ate an entire tray of freezer waffles, and Googled how to tell if you're being stalked without sounding crazy. Then I went to the police. They were useless. "He hasn't threatened you," the officer said with a shrug. "Sounds like a coincidence." Right. Coincidence. Like how I just happened to be a magnet for emotionally repressed men with trauma and Spotify Premium. I started changing my routine. Different coffee shop. Different grocery store. I even dyed my hair a shade darker and started wearing a beanie, like I was going through a lesbian awakening. It didn't help. He didn't stop. He never touched me. Never followed too close. Just appeared. Always watching. Always on the edge of my periphery. It was like he turned stalking into performance art. Eventually I broke. I decided to confront him. I waited until he showed up at the bookstore again. He was sitting in the philosophy section, pretending to read Camus, because of course he was. I walked up, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my teeth. "Reese." He looked up, calm as ever. "Talia." "Hi. Why are you following me?" "I'm not. You've shown up at my coffee shop, my grocery store, the cinema, the dog park." "I like those places too," he said. "It's not my fault we have similar taste." I blinked. "You left a note under my door." His eyes didn't even flicker. "I wanted to apologize for not being what you needed." "That's not an apology. That's manipulation." He tilted his head. "You're very reactive." That's when I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere with him. Reese didn't see what he was doing as wrong. To him, this was romantic persistence. A slow burn love story. Our love story. I left. I filed another report. This time I brought photos. Dates. Scamshots. They told me they'd look into it. Eventually Reese stopped appearing. Whether it was the police, the growing paper trail, or the fact that I threatened to post a TikTok calling him out, which I absolutely recorded. I'll never know. But he vanished. And yet, even now months later, I still find myself looking over my shoulder. I changed apartments. Got a Ring camera. My cat still growls at the hallway sometimes. I don't date much anymore. But when I do, I ask different questions. Not just what do you do? Or what's your favorite band? Now I ask, do you respect boundaries? Do you take no as a full sentence? And most importantly, have you ever read the bell jar? If they say yes, I run. She cried the first time we kissed. Not sobbing, not dramatic, just a single tear sliding down her cheek as her lips pressed against mine. And then she laughed, like she was embarrassed by her own intensity. I'm sorry, she whispered. I just haven't felt safe in a long time. I should have stepped back, asked what she meant, thought twice about what I was walking into. But instead, I kissed her again and said, "You're safe now." It felt like the right thing to say, like the kind of line you hear in movies, right before everything goes to hell. Her name was Solène. We'd been talking for a few days before we met up, a coffee shop date that turned into a 5-hour marathon of trauma stories, philosophical tangents, and long silences that didn't feel awkward. She had this way of looking at you like she was cataloging your soul, and when she listened, it was with her whole body. That night, she invited me back to her place. I don't do this often, she said, unlocking the door, but I feel like you're different. The apartment was dimly lit, filled with plants that looked like they were surviving on emotional neglect and secondhand incense. There were crystals on the windowsill and a blanket on the couch that smelled faintly of lavender and anxiety. We sat close, knees touching. She told me about her ex, the one who screamed in his sleep and once locked her out during an argument. About her father, who left when she was 7 and never called again. About the friend who OD'd in her arms. I attract chaos, she said, but somehow you feel calm. I didn't know what to say, so I touched her leg. She touched my face. The kiss followed. And then the tear. The next morning, she made me eggs and played a playlist called For When Breathing Hurts. I thought that was a joke. It wasn't. You can stay if you want, she said. I mean, not just today. I mean in general. I laughed, assuming she was joking again. She smiled, but her eyes stayed on mine. You're not going to leave, are you? I told her no. Not today. Not yet. She nodded. Good. I can't do another vanishing act. Over the next few weeks, we became inseparable. And not in the cute, we're obsessed with each other kind of way. More like, emotionally fused. She'd text me every morning. Still breathing? I'd reply, still here. She called me when she felt panic coming on, which was often. She cried during sex, which she claimed was part of releasing trauma. She woke me up in the middle of the night to ask if I would still love her if she lost everything. I'm not going anywhere, I'd whisper, half asleep. But I was already losing pieces of myself. She started asking for things. Subtle at first. Can you skip your friend's party? I just don't want to be alone tonight. Can you not talk to your ex? I don't trust her energy. Can I borrow your card for a few days? I'm short on rent again. Each request came with a story, a nightmare, a panic attack, a memory that left her shaking. And I believed her. Because every time I tried to say no, she'd look at me like I'd just walked out like the rest of them. Don't make me feel like I'm too much, she'd whisper. Or worse, you said I was safe with you. One night, I told her I needed space. Just a night alone. To breathe. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just texted, I understand. I hope you don't regret this if something happens to me tonight. I called immediately. She didn't pick up. I drove to her place. Found her on the couch, wrapped in blankets, shaking. I wasn't going to do anything, she said. I just needed to know you cared. I stayed the night. Of course I did. After that, there were no more requests. Only needs. And each time I pulled away, she pulled harder. I stopped seeing my friends. They stopped asking. My phone went quiet, except for her. She wanted me everywhere, by her side at therapy, at the co-op, on the couch while she doom-scrolled Reddit threads about attachment theory. She started sending me articles about anxious avoidance and trauma bonding. This is us, she'd say. But we can heal together. Healing started to look a lot like sinking. I began lying. To her, to myself. I told her I was okay. That I was happy. That I still loved her. But love had become a negotiation. Affection was a form of currency. Sex felt like a contract I hadn't read the fine print on. And still I stayed. Why? Because leaving felt like betrayal. Because she was fragile. Because she'd built me into her survival story, and I didn't know how to tell her I couldn't carry it. Because every time I tried, she'd whisper, "Please. Everyone leaves. Don't be like them." And I didn't want to be them. The last straw came on a Thursday. I told her I had a job interview across town, one I hadn't told her about until that morning. She looked at me like I'd cheated. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to stress you out. You're making choices about our life without me." "Our life?" I blinked. "What happens to us if you get this job?" I didn't answer. She cried. She screamed. She threw one of her crystals at the door. And then she collapsed. Just dropped to the floor like a puppet whose strings had been cut. I froze. She rocked back and forth, whispering, "I'm not okay. I'm not okay. I'm not okay." And I realized neither was I. I left. I didn't go to the interview. I didn't answer her calls. I went home and sat in my car for an hour, shaking. The next day, she sent me a voice message. "I just want to say I forgive you. I know you're scared. I know this is big. But I love you enough for both of us. You'll come back. You always do." But I didn't. Not this time. I blocked her number. Deleted the photos. Threw out the sweatshirt she used to wear when she slept over. But the guilt didn't go. It still hasn't. It's been almost a year. I still flinch when someone says, "You're safe with me." I still have dreams where she's crying, and I'm walking away, and I wake up drenched in sweat and shame. I know now what it was. Trauma bonding. Emotional enmeshment. A relationship built on shared wounds instead of mutual growth. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't evil. She was in pain. But love isn't about saving someone who's drowning by jumping in after them with your pockets full of rocks. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is swim to shore, even if they scream your name the whole way. The first time I saw him, I was carrying a bag of frozen mangoes and a bottle of cheap wine, and he was holding a dead plant. We were in the elevator of my building, me sweaty from a long day at work, and him looking like someone had plucked him from a Scandinavian furniture catalog. Tousled hair, folded sleeves, wire-rimmed glasses, and a surprisingly sincere hi. The elevator jerked slightly as it started. He looked down at the plant in his hands. "Either I'm really bad with succulents," he said, "or this one died of natural causes." I smiled. "Murder it. That way you can stop blaming yourself." He laughed. "You live on 6? 5. I'm in 3D. Just moved in. If you hear obscure jazz at 3 a.m., it's either me or a ghost with excellent taste." That was it, our meet cute. 2 strangers, 1 dying plant, and a 40-second elevator ride that somehow stuck with me. The next day, he slipped a note under my door. "You're the first neighbor who made me laugh. Want to help me pick out a less suicidal succulent?" I said yes. His name was Theo. Theo and I didn't fall into a relationship. We slid into it like a warm bath. One night of dinner and wine turned into sleeping over, turned into toothbrushes in each other's bathrooms, turned into "What are we?" whispered against my neck at 2 a.m. He was charming in a disheveled, poet who pays his rent kind of way. Said he worked in publishing. Wrote essays when the mood struck, which apparently struck often, because he was always scribbling in a Moleskine or typing with intensity on his laptop. He had a reading voice that could make cereal box copy sound erotic, and he wore cologne that smelled like bergamot and secrets. He remembered the little things. My favorite tea. That I hated the word moist. That I once said I thought I was unlovable after my last breakup, and instead of flinching, he kissed my temple and whispered, "Not even close." I didn't ask too many questions. I was too busy feeling seen. Adored. Desirable in a way that felt designed specifically for me. Which, in hindsight, should have been my first clue. The cracks began small. He never let me into his apartment for more than a few minutes. He always came to mine. "It's a disaster zone," he'd say, laughing. "I'm not ready to let you see my chaos." I figured it was a guy thing. Privacy. Pride. Then there were the nights he'd disappear. No texts. No calls. Just gone. He'd reappear the next day with some vague story. Had to help a friend. Phone died. Fell asleep on someone's couch. He always looked wrecked. Tired. But he'd kiss me like he missed me, and I'd forget I was supposed to be angry. I started noticing other inconsistencies. He said he was an editor, but I never saw him go to work. He had no online presence, not even a LinkedIn. When I asked about it, he said he avoided the digital gaze. One night, I looked through his wallet while he was in the shower. Don't judge me, my gut was screaming. No ID. Just a Metro card and an old receipt from a gas station in Vermont. When I confronted him, he smiled. "Really, Liv? Snooping? Who are you, Theo? I'm the guy who brings you tea when you're sick, who listens to your rants about your mother, who makes you come so hard you forget your own name. Does it matter what label's on my business card? I wanted to scream. But the thing is, he wasn't wrong. He had become a part of my life, in a way that felt tangled and deep. He knew me in ways no one else had. But I still didn't know him. Then came the woman. It was a Saturday morning. I was walking back from the farmer's market, arms full of overpriced produce and a sense of smug domesticity when I saw them. Theo. And her. She was tall, red-haired, wearing a scarf that looked expensive and a scowl that didn't fade. They were arguing in hushed tones by the entrance of our building. I stopped. Watched. She slapped him. Not hard. But enough. He spotted me. Froze. Liv, he said. This isn't. Who is she? The woman snapped. Theo looked at her. Then at me. He didn't answer. I walked away. He didn't follow. 24 hours of silence. Then, a knock at my door. I didn't open it. He slipped another note under it. I'm sorry. I messed up. She's from my past. She's not what you think. What I thought. I thought she was his wife. Or his girlfriend. Or his actual girlfriend, and I was the side project. I didn't reply. But I didn't block him either. 2 days later, he was back. This time with a suitcase. Said he'd left her. Said he had nowhere else to go. And like an idiot, I let him in. We had sex that night, the kind that feels like a storm. Desperate. Wordless. Angry and tender, all at once. I told myself it was closure. But he stayed. Again. Over the next few weeks, I unraveled the truth in pieces. He wasn't an editor. He'd worked at a bookstore once, 5 years ago. He didn't live in 3D. He had been staying with different women since leaving Vermont. He had at least 2 phones and never let me see either. He wasn't just hiding things. He was someone else entirely. I asked him point blank, why me? He looked at me, eyes soft. Because you let me in. I wanted to hate him. Scream. Break things. But instead, I sat on the floor and cried. Because the worst part wasn't that he lied. It was how much of me I gave him before I ever thought to ask. I kicked him out the next morning. He didn't fight it. He just kissed my forehead and said, be careful who you trust next. Not everyone will be as gentle as me. And he left. It's been 8 months. The first time I met Cale in person, he told me he could feel my sadness before I said one word to him. We'd agreed to meet at a cozy little wine bar tucked behind a flower shop, not too loud, not too trendy. I arrived first, which was rare for me. I'm usually the one rushing in 5 minutes late, apologizing and laughing too hard at my own fluster. But that night, I sat at a high table by the window, watching people pass by in the amber glow of the street lamp, sipping a glass of Malbec to calm my nerves. Cale walked in like he'd already been there, like the bar had rearranged itself to welcome him. He was tall, but not in the intimidating way. He wore a gray Henley under a black wool coat, the sleeves pushed up just enough to show a tattoo on his forearm, something abstract, like falling leaves or broken wings. His eyes were a deep, stormy blue. And when they landed on me, I swear I felt like I'd been seen down to the marrow. Marin, he said, with a sort of soft awe, like my name was a prayer. Hi. I stood up, suddenly self-conscious about my posture, my lipstick, the way my sweater clung a little too tightly after sitting down. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. You smell like rain, he murmured. Not the storm. The kind right before it starts. I laughed, caught off guard. That's poetic. I feel things deeply, he said, like it was a confession. Sometimes too deeply. We sat down. He didn't even glance at the menu. I already know what I want, he said, eyes still on me. But you take your time. You're someone who needs to feel the mood first, right? It was eerie how accurate he was. I hadn't told him that. I hadn't told anyone that. I used to joke that I was emotionally porous in a world full of waterproof people. He asked me questions that bypassed the usual small talk buffer. What was the worst thing I'd ever done and didn't regret? When was the first time I realized my parents were flawed? What's the one thing I still haven't forgiven myself for? But the way he asked made it feel safe. Like he wasn't collecting information, he was holding space. He told me he was a trauma-informed meditation coach, that he volunteered with survivors of domestic violence, that he could read people's energy the way others read facial expressions. I'm an empath, he said simply, but not the Instagram kind. I smiled. What does that mean? It means I don't weaponize it. I don't use it to manipulate. I just feel. And I can feel that you've been carrying things alone for a long time. He reached across the table and took my hand. My first instinct was to pull back, but something in his grip was grounding, like being held, not captured. "You don't have to do that with me," he said. "Do what?" "Perform strength." I should have questioned it. I should have asked how he knew that, or why he thought I needed saving. But I didn't. I was tired of being the one who always had it together. And here was someone who saw the cracks and didn't flinch. We spent 3 hours at that bar. Shared 2 more glasses of wine. Talked about dreams, trauma, shame. The kind of things that usually come out 6 months into a relationship, not on the first date. When he walked me to my car, he didn't try to kiss me. He just tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear and said, "Good night, brave girl." I cried on the drive home. I didn't even know why. The next few weeks were a blur of voice notes, late-night calls, and long walks in the park where Cale would stop mid-conversation to tell me something he had felt about me. "You're afraid that if you're vulnerable, people will leave. You smile too much when you talk about your childhood. That's how I know it wasn't safe. You don't trust people who like you easily. You think love has to be earned." It was like he had keys to every locked room inside me. And at first, it felt like healing. He'd hold me on his couch, my face pressed against his chest, his fingers tracing circles on my back. "You don't have to be strong here," he whispered once. "You're allowed to fall apart." And I did. I told him things I hadn't told anyone. About my father's alcoholism. About the miscarriage I had 3 years ago. About the ex who made me feel like I was always too much. Cale didn't flinch. He nodded. Held my hand. Told me I was magic wrapped in scars. But then things started to shift. The first time I canceled a date because I was tired, he went quiet for hours. When he finally texted back, it said, "I thought you were different." I apologized. He said it was fine, but the warmth had cooled. Another time, I told him I was going out with friends. He replied, "Just don't fall into your old pattern of surrounding yourself with people who don't really see you." I asked him what he meant. "Nothing," he said. "Just be careful. You tend to give too much to people who don't deserve it." I canceled the plans. That became a pattern. He'd say something that sounded like concern, but felt like control. "You're giving your energy to the wrong places. I just feel like you're not fully present with me today. You're retreating again. That's not healthy." What made it confusing was that he never raised his voice. Never got angry. He just withdrew. Subtly. Quietly. Like a disappointed parent. And every time, I scrambled to earn his affection back. I stopped seeing some of my friends. I skipped yoga. I stopped journaling. He once read an entry over my shoulder and said it was too self-focused. "You're ruminating," he told me. "It's not productive." So I stopped. I started asking him what I should feel. What I should say. I'd text him before doing anything social. "Do you think I should go?" "You'll probably feel drained after," he'd say. "But it's your choice." It never felt like a real choice. One night, I told him I needed space. That I felt like I was losing parts of myself. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "Wow," he said. "After everything I've held for you, this is how you respond." I sat there stunned. "I never asked for that." "No," he replied. "But you needed it, and I gave it willingly. I just didn't expect you to throw me away like I'm disposable." I apologized. Again. He forgave me. Again. But it kept happening. Until one night, he said, "I think you have emotional abandonment issues. That's why you're always pushing me away." I told him that wasn't fair. That he was twisting things. He didn't yell. He didn't call me names. He just stood up, walked to the door, and said, "I need to protect my energy from your toxicity." And he left. That was the last time I saw him. I didn't block him. He didn't reach out. But the silence was deafening. I spent weeks unraveling everything. Every compliment that had a hook in it. Every moment of empathy that doubled as surveillance. My therapist called it coercive control, soft abuse, emotional enmeshment. "He used your vulnerability as currency," she said. "And when you stopped paying, he left." It's been months. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head when I try to speak my truth. Still doubt my gut, because he told me I couldn't trust it. But I'm learning. Empathy doesn't come with strings. And love doesn't ask you to disappear. There's a strange kind of intimacy in the way people present themselves online. The curated bios. The filtered smiles. The half-truths tucked into captions. I've never been naive about it. Never one of those love-at-first-swipe types. But when I matched with Alira, all of that cynicism unraveled fast. Her profile wasn't flashy. No bikini shots or group photos that made you guess which one she was. Just a close-up of her face, warm brown eyes, auburn hair falling messily over one side, and a faint smirk that made it feel like she knew something you didn't. Her bio read, "Tell me your favorite David Lynch film. And don't say Mulholland Drive unless you mean it." I laughed when I read it. No one mentions David Lynch unless they're trying to be edgy. I replied anyway. Inland Empire. I still don't know what I watched, but I couldn't look away. She responded within minutes. Finally, someone who gets it. That was how it began. A simple exchange about surreal cinema that turned into a 3-hour message thread. By the end of the night, we'd jumped from movies to music, to childhood memories, to our most irrational fears. She was witty, articulate, and had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, even when that room was a digital void. We moved to texting the next day. She sent voice notes, low and smoky, like she'd just woken up, even when she hadn't. Every message felt handwritten, crafted. She asked questions that felt rare. What book changed me, what my dog's name was as a kid, how I handled grief. I started looking forward to her messages the way you look forward to taking off tight shoes after a long day. She made it easy to open up. We met in person a week later. She suggested a bookstore cafe tucked into the corner of a historic district. Quiet, low lighting, the smell of espresso and dust. She wore a black velvet dress and deep red lipstick. She looked like a noir dream. "You're taller than I expected," she said, not breaking eye contact as she sipped her coffee. "You're sharper than I expected," I replied. Her laugh was soft, but her eyes didn't laugh with her. I chalked it up to nerves. First dates always have a strange energy. The conversation flowed like it had online. We talked about obscure documentaries, the ethics of AI, and why we both hated small talk. She touched my arm when she made a joke. Laughed a little too hard at mine. There was a subtle, charged energy between us, like a string pulling taut under the surface. After she left that night, I found a note tucked into my coat pocket. "You smell like cedarwood and control." "I like it." I reread it 3 times. Smiled. Maybe I had finally met someone who saw me. We started seeing each other regularly. Not every day, but often enough that my routine bent around her. Her apartment was draped in silk curtains, old books, and lit candles. She always played vinyl records, slow, haunting music that filled the space like fog. One night, wrapped in her sheets, she whispered, "I've never felt this safe with anyone." I kissed her shoulder. "You can trust me." It didn't feel like a performance. Not then. But over time, things began to feel too aligned. At first, it was subtle. She'd mention a band I loved, one I hadn't talked about in years. She quoted a line from a screenplay I wrote in college, word for word. I asked her how she knew it. She said she must have seen it on my old blog. I didn't remember ever posting it publicly. Then came the coffee shop incident. We were walking downtown when she casually pointed to a tiny cafe. "You used to come here all the time, right? Before work." I stopped mid-step. "How'd you know that?" She smiled. "You told me." But I hadn't. I was certain. Later that night, I searched my name online. Dug up old social media posts, long-forgotten blogs. Nothing mentioned that cafe. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe I had mentioned it in passing. Relationships are about vulnerability, right? Maybe I was just not used to being seen. But the feeling was there, like a low hum you can't quite locate. A week later, a friend tagged me in an old photo on Facebook. A group shot from a film festival years ago. In the background, barely noticeable, was a woman with auburn hair standing near the edge of the frame. I zoomed in. It was Alira. My stomach dropped. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to accuse her. I wasn't even sure what I'd be accusing her of. But I started paying closer attention. Her stories became inconsistent. She said she grew up in Vermont, but later mentioned a high school in Oregon. She claimed she hated horror films, but quoted The Babadook during dinner. Each slip was small, but together they formed a mosaic of contradiction. I confronted her gently. "Alira, where did you really grow up?" She didn't flinch. "Why are you asking?" "Because you've said 3 different places." She tilted her head. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." She smiled, slow and deliberate. "I just wanted to be the version of me you'd fall for." My blood ran cold. This wasn't about compatibility. It was construction. She had built herself from my data, scraps of online content, tagged photos, half-remembered conversations. She was a reflection, not a person. A mirror polished to perfection. "I liked you," I said, "because I thought you were real." "I am real," she whispered. "Just not in the way you expected." I left that night. I blocked her number, deleted our messages, and scrubbed my digital footprint. But it didn't feel over. Weeks later, I started seeing her online again. New profiles, different names, but the same eyes. She messaged one of my friends on a dating app. Used the same line she used on me. Tell me your favorite David Lynch film. I didn't reply. I couldn't.